This is Heart-repreneur Radio, maximizing your personal and business results by leading with your heart. With your host, Terri Levine. Listen every week as Terri tackles the topics that will help you become a successful heart-centered entrepreneur. Be sure to read the blog posts at www.heartrepreneur.com/blog. Come back often and add this show to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe in iTunes. You can also follow Terri on Twitter at MentorTerri and on Facebook.com/Heart-repreneur Terri Levine. And now here's Terri.
Hello and welcome to Heart-repreneur Radio and TV show with Terri Levine. I'm your co-host, Velma Gallant, and I'm excited to be here today. You can connect with Terri, me, and other like-minded heart-based business owners in the Heart-repreneurs with Terri Levine Facebook group, so go check it out. And as always, we love to know what kind of value you are getting from our show. We love those likes, we love those 5-star reviews, and we actually would appreciate it if you would subscribe. Today's quote: "The need to leave a legacy is our spiritual need to have a sense of meaning, purpose, personal congruence, and contribution." Stephen Covey. Today's show topic: how the value of congruence will make you more successful in business and happier in life. Our special guest this week is Mandy Barbee Lanier. Mandy Barbee Lanier is a performance coach, certified clinical hypnotherapist, and the founder of Palladium Mind, Inc. With 20 years experience leading teams, large and small, in the military, corporate, and clinical worlds, Mandy helps humans transform anxiety, confidence gaps, and disconnection into their unique advantage and fully access their personal power in weeks, not years, with their own consciousness. Unique from other approaches, Mandy helps people convert underlying inner problems and blocks into a stronger foundation of success so they can feel fulfilled in every aspect of their lives. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Thrive Global, Authority Magazine, and more. And she hosts the podcasts Calm, Confident, and Deliriously Happy. Welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thank you. Thank you, Velma. So great to be here today.
It's awesome to have you. Now, what you've shared, in sharing your introduction, you mentioned that you have 20 years experience leading teams, large and small, in the military, corporate, and clinical worlds. Can you talk a little bit about your background, please?
I love that. Just to warm up, I'd love to share a little bit more about that, various background. Well, I am the oldest of 5 daughters, born to very young parents in the southern rural U.S. in Georgia, north of Atlanta, for anybody who's familiar. And I knew from a very young age, because my father was working so hard, particularly for this reason. My dad was working and focused so hard to make sure that we had opportunities that he didn't necessarily allow himself or give to himself. And education was a huge one of those. And watching him work to support my future, it was a strong desire of mine to finance and also independently pursue my education. The military was a natural way for me to do that, given my awareness at 11 years old. And because structure and discipline was a big part of my upbringing, it was also a great fit. So I knew from a really young age that I wanted to go to a military institution for, quote, college, but, found out some of the different resources and opportunities that were available for someone who's entering college years. And at that time, I wanted to be a pilot. So the U.S. Air Force was the direction that I was heading. And I settled on the Air Force Academy. I applied to the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy. But at 17, I went to boot camp, or basic training, at the United States Air Force Academy. So it's quite a feat. It's a whole nother tale of getting into one of the service institutions, one of the service academies is just, it's such an incredible amount of work that's almost impossible to do without a lot of support. Mm-hmm. And so my family was there supporting that journey the whole way. And yeah, 17 is a really young age to head into basic training. And that's out in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is south of you guys,
Yeah.
in the Rockies, in the US Rockies. And that was a really eye-opening experience. So 4 years active there and going on 6 years active as a US Air Force aircraft maintenance officer. I served on the flight line at Langley Air Force Base, managing and supporting, leading teams that were turning F-22s for operational and other training purposes.
Mm-hmm.
The F-22s are the stealth fighters. So it was a really cool job in a lot of different respects. And around that 10-year mark, I left the Air Force and spent the next 7 years working in 4 different industries. So there was a disaster restoration industry. These are commercial industries, aerospace, commercial aerospace, medical device manufacturing, and ultimately commercial space industry, working for the Paul G. Allen Corporation, Vulcan, and then Stratolaunch. So that's where if that gives a little bit of color, like, whoa, how is that possible?
Well, it's kind of cool. Like I have not really a Navy background, but I mean, as a young person, I was in Sea Cadets, so I can appreciate the discipline aspects and everything like that. It was kind of weird being a Sea Cadet on the prairies, but it's where I landed and what I was happy with. So, but it's really cool seeing the adventure that, at least I look at it as an adventure that you've gone through to get to where you're at right now. How did you come up with the name of Palladium Mind?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the comment about the adventure. It kind of gives me a warm feeling to reflect back on that time instead of just sharing it, but like recognizing what an adventure it has really been. Well, it would probably help to share how I came to do what I do and what the purpose of that company is. And then the name Palladium Mind is going to make a lot of sense. Palladium is an element on the periodic table. So
Okay.
when you're thinking about branding and this idea that we were talking about even in the intro of congruence, I think one of the coolest things about getting to express ourselves through a company in service to others is the opportunity to bring congruence into every element of what we do. Because then we can really be understood. Then if somebody gets a glimpse of you or hears a sound bite or gets to actually spend time with you, they're kind of receiving the same underlying message. And as I was listening to Carol's episode from a couple of weeks ago that just came on, it's really about getting deeper into that essence of who we are. The discovery is about uncovering what is that essence within ourselves so we can come into a greater knowing of selves, and then others can then know us from that foundation. And I have been on a pursuit of minimalism for so much of my life for a lot of reasons. And the essential but valuable, precious, beautiful nature of the platinum group metals seemed a perfect fit for a company that helps people work with their minds and tame their own minds so that this beautiful gift of intellect and consciousness that we have can really be used as a tool that we have, rather than our total identity. Palladium also happens to be the metal in the platinum group that's the lightest and is also catalytic and soft. It's malleable. You can't even make this stuff up. I liked the word for the sound of it when you say it. And then I started looking up the qualities of palladium and I was like, this is just a perfect fit.
It absolutely is. Okay. So I just got to make sure I'm paying attention to our time. So you help people transform their anxiety and confidence gaps. And what else did you say? Disconnection into their unique advantage and fully access their personal power. So what I'm kind of hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that through the work that you do, you're actually, because you're transforming the anxiety and the confidence gaps and their disconnection, you're actually reconnecting them to the truth of who they are. Would that be accurate?
Yes, absolutely. And I think for each individual, the goal, like that stated outcome, is probably going to be different, because some people aren't necessarily interested as much in self-discovery as they are attainment of a new experience or the achievement of some goal that's meaningful or important. Whereas other people are really grappling with resolution of something that is very much in their face. So like a pain point that's very loud and obvious. So whether it's that somebody wants to actually know themselves so deeply, and that is the goal, or that they want to achieve something or they want to let something go, this type of work can do all of those things.
I really like that, because I think what that expresses is that those are still each connecting to the truth of who they are. If they're the kind of person who loves to pursue goals or adventure or whatever the case might be, that is connecting to the true essence of who they are. If they are wanting to resolve a pain point, they're wanting to leave that behind and connect again to the essence of who they are. So it sounds like some really brilliant work that you're doing there.
Thank you. Yes, I love that you brought it back there, because I think it's because I personally identify with the value of knowing oneself so much. And I see the work through the lens that not everybody is like overtly interested in that, but I agree completely. I love that lens.
Okay. So with respect to converting underlying inner problems and blocks and creating that stronger foundation of success, what are some of the things that you do to support people with that transformation?
Yes. Some of the things that we do, well, I kind of see my work as an evolution in time with an individual. So, and this has, of course, evolved as my practice and ability has evolved, you can imagine. But where I started off when I shifted from working for other or working in corporate industry into full-time, first there was a part-time transition ultimately, and then I was full-time back in 2017. Was it 2017? Yeah, it was actually it was super early. There we go. 2017. Yes. Okay. Settling on that. So I went very deeply into study about the unconscious and developing a strong and focus in helping people utilize trance states to shift or release those blocks. Ultimately, problems that are happening automatically are governed by your unconscious. They've already been handed over. So anxiety is a feeling I like to ask people as a kind of a joke. Are you choosing it, or is it happening on its own? And people are like, oh my gosh, no, it's happening on its own. I can't even stop it from happening. So whenever something's happening automatically, we know that it's been handed off to the subconscious to take care of, because the conscious mind isn't choosing it anymore. Anything that's done automatically has an association of keeping us safe. It's in place because it's trying to help us with something. And the reason for the pattern is connected to the way that the pattern expresses today, because it's like a button with a wire that goes to the result. That origin is stored in the body mind so that we don't forget. And the mechanism of automation is the emotion. That's how the body makes the thing happen every time. We shy away from things that are uncomfortable because we have that feeling of anxiety, or you could fill in the blank. Every emotion has a purpose. And go for
Go
it.
ahead.
I said, I, and I was like, her original question was, how do you help people? So if the problem's run by the unconscious, then we need to speak to the issue in the unconscious. Talking to feelings or reasoning with feelings doesn't help. But how do you talk to an unconscious problem that you might not even know, quote, what it is? A lot of times that's the frustration with anxiety. We don't necessarily know what's causing it. We do that through the language of the unconscious. And that is
Okay.
how I help people with imagery. Imagery, hormones, and emotions are the language in the unconscious. And I don't utilize hormone therapy with folks, but we do process emotion, and we do use imagery as an interface or a translator between our conscious knowing and the unconscious where the problem is living. Release happens instantaneously when you use that language.
It's got to be really rewarding to be able to see that kind of transformation happening with your clients.
I think you're speaking to the motivation, to the motivation type of myself. Like, I needed to see something happen for folks quickly, and it just so happens that I hold a specific area and place and offering in a market where, when you need and you're ready to move something now, oftentimes people say they've exhausted every other option.
Mm-hmm.
I help people step in and out. It's a value of mine that people can be in and out of my practice rapidly and back in the game of their life, so that we don't spend years together, strategizing or talking about these problems.
Awesome. Okay. So I just want to pause here right now. We do need to pause for a commercial break. And when we come back, I want you to be able to share how our listeners can best connect with you. So we're going to pause for our break.
Hey there, it's Terri Levine. I just wanted to pop in for just a moment as you're listening here to Heart-repreneur Radio and watching Heart-repreneur TV. We have so many new and exciting things going on. So you can watch a free masterclass. Highly recommend to get a conveyor belt of qualified prospects. That's at TL, like Terri Levine, tlwebinar.com. Head over there, enjoy it, keep listening and sharing the show.
Welcome back to Heart-repreneur Radio and TV with our special guest, Mandy Barbee Lanier. And we have been talking a lot about the subconscious, automatic problems, the language of the subconscious, expressing yourself, and connecting to the reality of who you are. So we've covered a lot already. Mandy, can you just share with us the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
Yes, of course. Thanks. So my website, palladiummind.com, palladium mind.com. I look at it like a little fenced in yard or a garden where people can explore all the things, whether it's to explore working together or just to get a really strong sense of who I am and how I can help a loved one. Palladiummind.com is a great place to do that. I'm also on Instagram at Mandy Barbee Lanier, Mandy, Mandy, Barbee Lanier.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to touch a little bit on your transition from corporate America to your own business. You mentioned that you did do a part-time transition, and I really love that you shared that, because I think there are a lot of people who think we need to jump from one pool into the other and don't realize that we actually can do it in a transition kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up transitioning?
It's my journey is, I'm looking back, that was to be totally honest, it was just a very chaotic time. I had this beautiful gift of, it was more than 6 months. Honestly, I think it was like a year. I had 6 months full on off in between jobs when I left commercial aerospace before I was welcomed onto the team with Paul G. Allen at Vulcan at the time. And that 6 months, I think of it in the 6-month period, because 6 months into the break, I think, sometimes we are like in a huge question mark or having doubts or even fears if we have a gap in employment. It can be very destabilizing if we don't already know what the underlying purpose is. But at this moment in my life, when I left that one job, I knew that there was something else. It was a sense of trust. And I think that trust had been cultivating for a really long time. I had been developing the mental discipline to hold trust when something like unknown was going on around me that has a tendency to make us feel uncomfortable. And I just trusted that the time would be for a purpose. And I chose to apply it in a way that would serve my highest needs. And for me at the time, that was through rock, ice, and alpine climbing. I was already an alpinist, and I could lead rock. I had led rock climbs, traditional rock climbs up in your neck of the woods, down in Yosemite, like all through the West Coast and Wyoming. And I used this time to deepen the craft of like rock climbing, ice climbing, and mountain climbing. And about 6 months in, I was sitting between my best friend and her mother at a farewell party where she was going to go for a year. Her mother was the best hypnotherapist in Seattle at the time. And I had already explored this twice in my life for creating a change around issues that were very pressing in the moment. I knew the power of the work, but it had never crossed my mind to do this for a living. And I was sitting between them and I just said, oh my gosh, it hit me like a wall. I said, I'm supposed to do this in my mind. And the mother was so supportive. Her name is Marilyn. She was so supportive, so encouraging. She put me on the right track with becoming trained in a really professional and in-depth way in residence at a school for like 12. It ended up being 12 weeks at that stint and another 2 or 4 somewhere else in London for a time. And as I was in training, I had all but decided, I was like, that is a door that's closing. I am doing this now. I'm called to this. And this very serendipitous introduction with the Paul Allen Company happened. And whereas I hadn't really heard yeses during that open period before, that opportunity almost seemed like something I couldn't shut down, nor did I want to, because it was so thrilling. So about a year in that gap, I had just started my own company and I began work for this really illustrious, exciting team in the commercial space industry. So I proceeded to set up an office where I shared the office part-time with another practitioner in downtown Seattle on nights. And I was working with Paul Allen for like a year. And ultimately, as we just chatted briefly before hitting record, when my father passed in 2017, things came into focus for me that life is not, I was reminded how short life can be, and began to take steps to completely separate from corporate life, likely for good. And it was at that time that I pursued the full time, but I was already working. And it was like, from working these very full days at this corporation, I would go on nights and leave with more energy after working with the client. Maybe it's 9 p.m. when we complete. I had a lot more energy than even when I went in the front door, just because I was truly doing what I'm meant to do.
That is so cool. There was a lot of really valuable bites in there for our listeners. One of them would be that the pathway to the business is not always straight.
I just got goosebumps.
And that whatever way that is occurring is perfect. And there was another bite in there that you said that really grabbed my attention, and that is the discipline to hold trust. And so that, I think, is really fascinating, because I think people think that trust is something that's just automatic, that you either have it or you don't. And what I heard in that was that you cultivated it as a discipline and that it was a practice that you grew. Is that a good reflection of what you said?
Yes, very much so. And I think of trust as an action. I think that the biggest mistake that we make when we're finding our way, I think that my belief, my perspective is that most of us experience this, is we wait to feel the trust. It's kind of like love versus understanding that trust is like stepping in and not straddling the fence.
Ooh, that's good.
Thank you. It took me a long time to figure that out. And there's nothing wrong if you do find yourself in a position where you need to apply that discipline. It doesn't mean that you're deluding yourself or seeing only what's positive or forcing it. It's just that to trust the trust, you need to see that it's safe that you did sometimes. And so it's like a feedback, a layered process that happens over time.
I really like that. And I like that stepping in and not straddling the fence. I think I've been a fence straddler for a good portion of my life. And there are times where it's not bad, because in order to straddle the fence, you do have to pull one leg up and put it over. So yes. It's not a bad thing. It is part of that transition. I'd almost label that one as the part-time transition of trust. Yes. Is straddling the fence. You're putting your leg over, but there does come a point where we want to choose to pull the other leg over and go. And that is where I think where you say trust is an action and it's not necessarily a feeling. Just like love. I mean, I've heard that quite a bit, that love is a decision. And I think trust is a decision as well, right? It is the decision to take an action in that direction. So yes. I think that is super valuable. I know.
Thank you.
I know it makes a lot of sense to me, and it kind of, for me, it's connected a couple of those dots.
That's a huge focus for what I think is done on my podcast, or really anytime I create content anywhere. It's a focus on providing the lens, because I think when I hear something like that and I'm receiving it, it provides relief around something that's a struggle that might be just an issue of perception. And I think that that's peacemaking in action. So aside from other ways that we can create content, one of my values is just constantly providing pieces of truth. I also say that I help people install true beliefs. Because sometimes we know things are true, but we don't believe it. We know it's true, but we don't believe it. So if we can install that belief, then everything's in alignment. Again, there's no external problem. It's just an issue of that perception. And we know that, but how do we crack it? We need to install the belief. But it's a huge... I feel the same when I hear something like that, especially even that piece of information. I'm hoping that people just feel like that sigh of relief, like I do when somebody reminds me, actually, you're doing it right. It's supposed to go like this.
Well, I like it because it's, in order to get from one side of the fence to the other, you do have to straddle it. It's not a judgment. It's a part of the process. So
I love that imagery too.
Peacemaking in action. There was something in there that stood out for me. You said that, I can't remember how you said it, but it was basically when you support people to connect the dots. And
was it about the value of creating content in the first place?
I think that's probably what it is, but I feel like there's something more in there, in that the work that you're doing is uninstalling specific beliefs that are already there, and then installing the beliefs that serve us more. And that really is peace making
Yes.
in action as well.
Exactly. You're just balancing the picture because it's already fine, but we're seeing it as not fine. And the thing is, people already know this, but we're trapped in this loop of solving a problem that doesn't exist. We're literally focusing on a problem that's not even real, and we know it, but we can't stop feeling the negative relationship to it because of our perception.
Mm-hmm.
And this is universal. But that's where trance work can be really effective at getting between that problem. One of the things that was coming up for me when you were talking about straddling the fence in that picture is a comparison or a relationship that I see back to the reason why a lot of people come to someone like me in the first place is because they're straddling a fence. And they're trying to accelerate that process, but they don't know, should I be on this side or this side, this side or this side? It's actually not comfortable to be on the fence.
No.
But it's a question of which side. And in a really practical sense, I just was writing about this the other day. I was focusing so much on clarity recently because just for the sake of my own clarity and messaging and communicating intangible into like understandable concepts, I have a framework, and clarity is one of the 4 pillars of the framework. But I was talking about clarity so much, and then I realized that clarity in itself doesn't result in self-trust. It's the discernment process that has to also accompany seeing a clear picture and knowing that we're seeing a clear picture. If we don't bring that discernment process, so that's something I think that in the moment, I can see you nodding your head. I feel like in the moment, even somebody could apply that to like, holy crap, what's missing here? Having a rock solid discernment process is my number one recommendation.
Well, and I think too, that discernment process is, so when we're straddling the fence, I think we can actually claim that as a good moment because we're moving out of where we were into where we want to go, should go, belong. And so we've taken that first step in that direction, and it's adding the clarity to be able to release the side we're leaving and move into the side that we're going to. And that's what I kind of hear you're doing with their work. When they come to you, they're very likely have already thrown that first leg over the fence because they realize that there's something that needs to change or that they want to change.
Oh, yes, exactly. That's where we enter that state of discomfort and then trusting the self enough. It's not just about, okay, I started doing it, so it's the right thing. That's where a moment where I think we really do want to check what's causing you to pause. Is what's causing you to pause actually more? Sometimes we have to butt up against, some people are decision makers. They have a decision making style where they need to be presented with, no, not that, no, not that, no, not that. But then they know what the yes is. But it's through the contrast that they know their yes. That can be really effective. But when things are really murky and complex, it's not that easy. You can refine a discernment process too. I just want to encourage people. You can refine a discernment process so that it's high quality, not second guessed later, quick, and dependable.
Brilliant. Okay. There's what I'm hearing is there's lots of opportunities to find our way through whatever it is that we're going through. And there's no one right way. And that's what I'm hearing is what you bring to the table is an opportunity for people to be able to move through these things in whatever way is correct for them.
Exactly. That is the nail on the head. That is like the most important aspect of, I'm about to cry. That's like literally the most important value that I have.
Awesome. Very awesome. Okay. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I know our conversation could probably continue for another 30 minutes, which unfortunately we don't have. Can you share once again with our listeners the best way to be able to connect with you?
Yes, thank you, Velma. I'd love to. My website, palladiummind.com. You can check the periodic table for the elements, palladium for the spelling of that, palladium mind, like you use your mind to make decisions.com. And there is a meditation there if folks would like it. And it took me like 4 years to create something that I would push, that I would say, please take advantage of this, that was for free. Because sometimes when we give something for free, what we're receiving is attention. And I just feel that keeps me in congruence. But this meditation is more than that. It's a visualization that is a tool for transformation in and of itself, besides being extremely beautiful listening experience. And that's palladiummind.com/meditation. This will help people create change on their own, regardless of what direction their journey takes them next. And I hope that they would deeply enjoy it and let me know how it goes.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Mandy. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I think we covered a lot of really valuable information for our listeners.
I hope that they feel the same way, and I'm so glad that you do. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for Terri as well.
Absolutely. And thank you to our listeners for coming and spending your valuable time with us. We'd love to hear what it is that you got from today's show. So please leave those in the comments where available. And we love your likes. We love those 5-star reviews, and be sure to subscribe. And last and most important, head on over to Facebook and connect with Terri, me, and other like-minded heart-based business owners at the Heart-repreneurs with Terri Levine Facebook group. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you and have a fantastic day.
You've been listening to Heart-repreneur Radio, maximizing your personal and business results by leading with your heart, with your host, Terri Levine. This show is produced every week for your enjoyment and education. To make sure you never miss a single show, add us to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe in iTunes. You can also read Terri's latest blog posts at www.heartrepreneur.com/blog, or follow Terri on Twitter at MentorTerri and on Facebook.com/Heart-repreneur Terri Levine. Your questions and comments are always welcome and appreciated. Send them to Terri on either Facebook or Twitter. Thank you for listening.